It wasn't a hunch, it was a cold certainty. After that strange, quiet meeting with my father Richard and my sister Angela, something felt wrong. I found myself in the secure archives of Archer Digital Ventures, a place I hadn't needed to visit in years. I found it tucked away. A single black folder, no label, no project code. My hands were shaking as I opened it. It wasn't a draft, it wasn't a proposal, it was a finalized, notarized legal document. 100% of the company's voting shares and the title of Chief Executive Officer were being transferred to Angela. My name wasn't in it, not once. 10 years of my life gone. I received nothing. Where are you listening from, and what time is it for you right now? Drop a comment below. I'd love to know who's part of our community. That betrayal didn't just hurt. It felt impossible. It felt impossible because for 10 years I wasn't just an employee. I was the successor. I'm Camille, 32 years old. And for a decade I was the head of strategy and operations at Archer Digital Ventures. That's a fancy title, but what it really meant was that I was the one who made everything work. I was the one who built the entire analytics system from scratch, the system that tracked consumer data and optimized our ad spends, the system that doubled our revenue in 3 years. I was the one who missed my best friend's wedding. I sat in my car in the church parking lot in my bridesmaid dress taking a call with a client because my father Richard had forgotten the meeting. I closed the deal, and I missed the ceremony. I was the one who sacrificed my 20s. My personal life was a graveyard of, "I'm sorry I have to work" texts. I didn't take vacations, I didn't date. I just worked. And I did it all because of the promise. My father Richard had always made it clear. "One day this will all be yours, Camille," he'd say, putting his arm around me after I'd land a big account. "You've got the head for it. You're the real deal." I believed him. I fueled my life with that promise. It became my entire identity. People ask why I stayed so long. Why I put up with the long hours and the missed holidays. It wasn't just loyalty. It was a psychological trap. When you're the survivor, the one who keeps the family business afloat, your sacrifice becomes your identity. You're not just an employee. You're the load-bearing wall holding the whole structure up. You wear the exhaustion like a badge of honor. You convince yourself that one day all that sacrifice will be recognized. That dedication becomes an invisible chain. You stop asking if you want to be there and only focus on the fact that you're needed. And the people who benefit from your sacrifice are more than happy to let you keep carrying the weight. I wasn't just working for a company. I was working for a man who looked me in the eye, called me his daughter, and promised me a future, all while he was drafting the paperwork to give it to someone else. Then my sister Angela came home. She hadn't been to a family dinner in years. She'd been finding herself in Bali, then building her personal brand in New York. She was 29, charismatic, beautiful, and had an Instagram following that my father Richard found fascinating. I, on the other hand, had spreadsheets. Richard was immediately blinded. Within a week of her return, he called a company-wide meeting. He announced Angela was the new CEO effective immediately. He said she had a fresh perspective that Archer Digital desperately needed. Her work started instantly. She changed the company's official font to something more playful. She spent 2 days deciding on a new color palette for the break room. She posted selfies in the conference room with the hashtag #girlboss, and she was gone by 4 p.m. every day. My data-driven strategies, the ones I spent months developing, were suddenly dismissed as too rigid. My projections were ignored in favor of Angela's creative instincts and vibes. I watched my father, a man who built his company on diligence and numbers, suddenly melt in her presence, captivated by her buzzwords. It's easy to ask why he was so blind, why he would hand his legacy to someone with no experience. But it wasn't just blindness, it was a willful choice. It was the trap of normalizing cruelty. In some families, a toxic system sets in early. They assign roles. There's the golden child, the one who can do no wrong, the one who represents all the family's hopes. And then there's the scapegoat, or in my case, the workhorse. My entire life, I was the one who was competent, so I was the one who got the work. Angela was the one who was charming, so she was the one who got the praise. My father didn't just prefer Angela. He needed her to be the brilliant one. Because if she was the creative genius, then he could justify ignoring my competence. And he needed me to be the reliable workhorse, the one who would just quietly keep everything running without complaint. He wasn't just blind. He was maintaining the system he had created. I was expected to just accept this. To just keep my head down and run the numbers while Angela ran the company into the ground. And then I remembered the Odyssey project. It was my baby. An $11 million campaign renewal for our biggest client, Susan. I had spent the last 6 months building the pitch. It was entirely data-driven, a complete strategic overhaul of her global marketing. I'd finished it 2 months ago, but Richard kept delaying the presentation. Susan's not ready for it yet, he'd said. Let's wait. Now I understood why. He wasn't waiting for Susan. He was waiting for Angela. I went into the server. There it was. My pitch deck, my data, my entire strategy. And at the bottom of the cover, slide presented by Angela's CEO. He was handing her my work. He was letting her steal my biggest idea and present it as her own. I stood there in the cold silence of the archive room holding the black folder. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. The person who believed in my father's promises was gone, and this new cold person just acted. I walked out of the office past the front desk and didn't say goodbye to anyone. I drove home in complete silence. That night I sat at my computer. It was 11:03 p.m. I opened my email. I typed in the addresses for my father, my sister, and Wendy, our head of HR. The subject line was resignation. The body of the email was 2 lines. This email serves as my immediate and final notice of resignation from Archer Digital Ventures. My access card and company laptop will be on my desk by morning. I hit send. Then I turned off my phone. A few days passed in silence. I just breathed. Then, as I expected, the panic started. My phone, when I finally turned it back on, was a disaster. Dozens of missed calls. My mother Karen had left tearful, pleading voicemails. Camille, you're tearing this family apart. Call me. Your father is just. Call me. My sister Angela sent a single text. You are being so dramatic. You're really going to throw a tantrum just because Dad finally gave me a real role. You're overreacting. From my father Richard, nothing. Not a word. Of course not. He was too proud to beg. He expected me to crawl back. I ignored them all. I deleted the voicemails. I blocked Angela's number. Then a call came in from Wendy, the HR manager. I answered. Camille, she sounded relieved. Thank God. Are you okay? I'm fine, Wendy. Just unemployed. She sighed. Listen, I'm not supposed to be telling you this, but they're moving forward with the Odyssey pitch. It's this Friday. Angela is. She's presenting it as her own. I know, I said. The thing is, Wendy lowered her voice. She doesn't understand the data. She's been asking the analysts to make the slides look prettier and simplify the numbers. She thinks the $11 million budget is a suggestion. She's going to crash and burn Camille. Is that what you want? I thought about it. I thought about the client Susan, a woman who lived and breathed data, a woman who 3 months ago I'd had a private lunch with. She'd been frustrated with my father's big picture vagueness, and I, in a moment of strategic confidence, had off the record shown her my preliminary data models for the Odyssey campaign. I remembered her looking at my analytics and nodding a small, satisfied smile on her face. This, she had said, is the kind of thinking I've been waiting for. Susan already knew the core of the idea was mine. She knew my mind, my numbers. Wendy, I said I'm not doing anything. What do you mean? I mean, I'm not going to interfere. I'm not going to save her. I'm not going to save him. I paused and a cold sort of calm settled over me. She wants to be CEO. Let her be CEO. I didn't need to set a trap. My father and sister had already built it, and Angela was about to walk right into it. I didn't have to be in that boardroom on Friday. I could picture it perfectly. I knew Angela, I knew Susan, and I knew my own data. Angela would have walked in with that effortless confidence, probably wearing some designer outfit that cost more than my first car. She'd charm the room smiling, calling everyone by their first name. She wouldn't just present the Odyssey project, she'd perform it. The lights would dim, and my slides, my data, my analytics, my strategy would flash across the screen, repackaged in her trendy new sans serif fonts. She'd use words like synergy and brand resonance and creative disruption. She'd talk about the feeling of the campaign, the vibe it created. She would glide over the complex data models, the algorithmic budget allocations, the consumer behavior forecasts. She'd treat them like footnotes, hurdles to get past on the way to the pretty pictures. She wouldn't understand that for the client Susan, the data was the pretty picture. I can see Susan sitting at the head of the table perfectly still, listening patiently. Susan, a CEO in her 60s who built her entire empire on numbers, not on hashtags. When Angela finished her performance, Susan would lean forward, her smile thin. Impressive, creative Angela. But can you walk me through slide 47 again, the allocation model? Your data suggests a 15% budget shift to programmatic display in Q3, but your projected ROI doesn't align with the consumer acquisition cost. Can you explain the dataset you used to justify that specific percentage? And that's when it would happen. The silence. The blank, panicked look in Angela's eyes as she frantically tried to find the slide. She wouldn't have an answer. She didn't know what that data meant. She only knew it looked convincing. I can picture her fumbling, trying to pivot, maybe even laughing lightly. Well, Susan, the real value here isn't just the hard numbers, it's the emotional synergy we're creating. It's about the holistic brand feel. But Susan wouldn't be listening. She'd be looking right at Angela, her expression unchanging, but her eyes sharp. Susan knew. She knew because I had secretly shown her my initial data models months ago in a quiet strategy session she'd requested off the books. She knew the mind that built that strategy, and she knew the person standing in front of her trying to pass it off as her own was a fraud. Angela's self-destruction wasn't a loud explosion. It wasn't a dramatic breakdown. It was the cold, terrifying silence of incompetence being exposed. It was the moment my father, who I'm sure was sitting in the back of the room beaming with pride, realized his new CEO couldn't answer a single basic question about the $11 million campaign she was supposedly leading. It was the moment the fresh perspective was revealed to be nothing but empty space. It was Friday afternoon. I was in my apartment folding sweaters into a cardboard box. I was packing. My personal phone rang, the one I never used for work. I looked at the screen. Susan. I answered. Camille, Susan here. I waited. That was. She paused, searching for the word. A remarkable presentation. I stayed silent. Your sister's creative direction, Susan continued, her voice flat and professional, was not what we discussed. More importantly, she was incapable of explaining a single data point from her own deck. She couldn't even identify the basic acquisition cost model you and I discussed months ago. I looked at a stack of books I needed to pack. I felt nothing. Just quiet. We are withdrawing the $11 million Odyssey contract effective immediately, Susan said. I am only telling you this as the project's originator because I want to be clear. We will not be partnering with Archer Digital unless you are the one leading the account. Goodbye, Camille. She hung up. I put the phone down and placed a book into the box. An hour later, my phone rang again. My father, I answered. Camille, what did you do? He wasn't asking, he was yelling. The panic in his voice was so thick I could barely understand him. Susan pulled the contract, the whole thing, $11 million. You have to come back. You have to fix this now. I paused, listening to his frantic breathing. I'm not the COO, father, I said, my voice perfectly calm. Angela is the CEO. Let your CEO handle it. I hung up. My phone immediately lit up again. My mother, Karen. I let it ring. A text message came through. It was Angela. You set me up. You fed me to the wolves. This is your fault. You ruined everything. My thumb hovered over the message. Then I just blocked her number. I blocked my mother's. I blocked my father's. I went back to packing. A full week went by. Nothing. Just silence. I heard through Wendy, the HR manager, that the office was in chaos. 2 of the senior data analysts had quit. Clients were calling, demanding answers about the Odyssey project fallout. The company was bleeding, and the new CEO had no idea how to stop it. Then on the 8th day, an email appeared in my personal inbox. It was from my father. Just 3 words. What do you want? I didn't reply. I forwarded it to my attorney. My lawyer replied to him, a legal meeting. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. I walked into that conference room, and for the first time in my life, my father looked small. He was sitting next to his lawyer, his shoulders slumped. He looked defeated. Angela wasn't there. He knew she couldn't be. Camille, he started, his voice heavy. I cut him off. Here are the terms, I said, sliding a single sheet of paper across the table. 50% equity transferred to my name. The Chief Operating Officer title effective immediately. Full strategic control over all accounts, including Odyssey. And Angela is demoted to a non-strategic creative role, reporting to my new head of strategy. She will not have any client contact or decision-making power. My father's lawyer read it and just sighed. Richard looked at the paper, then at me. 50%. That's the price, I said. He knew he had no choice. The company he built was days from insolvency. He nodded slowly. Agreed. When I walked back into the Archer Digital office, I didn't feel a rush of victory. I didn't feel like I'd won a war. I just felt purpose. This wasn't about revenge. Revenge is about the past, about punishing what's already broken. This was about justice. And true justice is about the future. It's the justice of the sower. It's not about burning the field down, it's about pulling the weeds so you can finally plant something real. My first act as COO wasn't firing people. It was rebuilding. I spent the morning restructuring the data team, and I called the 2 analysts who had quit. I offered them a raise and I told them about the new leadership. They were back by lunch. And that afternoon, I sat down at my new desk, the one in the corner office, and I called Susan. Susan, it's Camille Morgan. I heard her smile through the phone. Camille. I was wondering if I'd hear from you. I'm sorry about the confusion last week, I said. There's been a change in management. I'm the new COO, and I have 50% equity. Susan was quiet for a moment. Well, she said. That changes things. Send me the new proposal. I'll review it tonight. I'll do one better, I said, pulling up my original files. I'm sending you the real Odyssey pitch right now. The one you were supposed to see. I hung up the phone. My father, my sister, they thought my value was something they could give me, like a title or a percentage. They thought they could just hand it to Angela. But my value was never theirs to give. It was my competence. It was the work I had done, the systems I had built, the data I understood. They didn't see my worth until I took it away. They say you can't choose your family. Maybe that's true. But you can choose what you're willing to accept from them. You can't let them define your worth. You have to define it for yourself. And then you have to demand they respect it.